I died on April 15th. Tax day. How fitting. The nurse said it was a brain aneurysm, sudden and catastrophic, but I knew better. I died of stupidity, of trusting a man who looked me in the eyes every morning and lied through his perfect teeth. I died of signing my name on forms I didn't understand because he said it was easier this way, and we're a team, aren't we? I died owning nothing, worth nothing, having given everything to a man who gave it all to her. But then I woke up, not in a hospital, not in heaven or hell. I woke up in my old apartment, the one I'd shared with Marcus before we bought the house, before the wedding, before everything went so catastrophically wrong. My phone screen read, March 3rd, 2019, 4 years before my death, 1 month before our wedding. I sat up so fast I nearly fell out of bed, my hands shaking as I grabbed my phone and checked the date again. And again. My reflection in the darkened screen showed me at 26, not 30, my face, unmarked by the stress lines that had carved themselves deep by the end. My hair was longer, my eyes brighter. This wasn't possible. But neither was the crystal clear memory of dying, of the IRS agent's sympathetic face as she explained that yes, they'd taken the entire refund, my entire refund, $47,000 from my signing bonus at the firm, to pay off tax debt. Your husband's ex-girlfriend didn't pay her self-employment taxes for 3 years, she'd said, glancing at her notes. When you filed jointly, you became jointly liable for the household debt. I'm sorry. His ex-girlfriend? I'd whispered. She'd looked uncomfortable. I'm not supposed to, but yes, the debt was from her business. Your husband co-signed some loans, provided capital, the IRS pursued him, and when he couldn't pay, she gestured at the paperwork. Joint filing means joint responsibility. Except she wasn't his ex-girlfriend. She was his current girlfriend, his business partner, the friend from college. He had dinner with twice a week. The reason he'd been so insistent we filed jointly that year, even though my accountant had said we'd save more filing separately. It's about unity, Marcus had said, his hand warm on my shoulder. We're married now. We do things together. Trust me, baby. I've looked at the numbers. He'd looked at the numbers, all right. He'd seen my $47,000 refund and found a way to steal it. That was 3 years into our marriage. I'd found out about Veronica 2 years after that. By then, we had the house, in his name only because my credit score is better, it'll help with the interest rate. We had the investment accounts, in his name because I have more experience with the market. We had everything in his name, really, except the debt he made sure we shared. When I'd finally filed for divorce, I'd discovered the truth. Marcus and Veronica had been together since college. She'd started her consulting business with his money, and mine, though. I didn't know it. When the IRS came calling for her unpaid self-employment taxes, Marcus had panicked. He'd married me 3 months later. The timing hadn't been romantic. It had been calculated. He'd needed someone with a good income and no debt to file jointly with. Someone trusting enough to sign whatever he put in front of her. Someone stupid enough to love him. I'd been perfect. Now, sitting in my old apartment 4 years before my death, I stared at my younger hands and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Rage. Pure, clarifying rage. The door opened. Marcus walked in with coffee and bagels, his smile bright and innocent. Morning, beautiful. Can't believe we're getting married next month. Have you thought about the honeymoon? I was thinking Bali. I looked at him, really looked, and saw every lie he'd ever told me written in the confident set of his shoulders. He thought he was so smart, thought I was so dumb. Good morning, I said, my voice steady. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something. Shoot. He sat on the edge of the bed, all casual affection. I was thinking about our finances, for after the wedding. I watched his face carefully. My accountant mentioned that since we'll both be working, we might save more on taxes if we file separately. What do you think? The flicker was so brief, I would have missed it if I wasn't looking for it. A tightening around his eyes, a fraction of a second where the mask slipped. File separately? He laughed, but it sounded forced. Baby, no, that's not how married couples do things. We're a team now. We filed jointly. But the tax savings? I've looked into this extensively. He took my hand, his thumb rubbing circles on my palm. The gesture had once made me melt. Now it made my skin crawl. Trust me, joint filing is always better for married couples. It shows unity. The IRS likes it. Plus, think about the mortgage we're going to apply for. They'll want to see that we're a unified financial front. There it was. The pressure, the manipulation wrapped in concern. In my first life, I'd caved immediately. I'd wanted to be a unified front. I'd wanted him to think of me as a good wife, a team player. This time, I smiled. You're right. I'm probably just nervous about the wedding. Ignore me. Relief flooded his face. That's my girl. Now eat your bagel. We have that appointment with the caterer at 2. I ate my bagel. I smiled. I played the role of the eager bride, but inside, I was planning. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in deception. I went to every wedding planning appointment with enthusiasm. I smiled for photos. I said I do at the courthouse on April 3rd, 2019, with my family watching and Marcus's parents crying happy tears. Veronica was there too. She'd signed our guest book. Marcus's college friend, my mother had whispered. She's so elegant, and she brought such a generous gift. The gift was a set of crystal wine glasses. In my first life, I'd treasured them, used them for every anniversary dinner while Marcus texted Veronica under the table. This time, I thanked her with a warm hug and thought about how satisfying it would be to watch her fall. But I couldn't move yet. I needed to understand exactly what Marcus had done in my first life, and I needed to set up my defenses before he could strike. The first step was hiring someone Marcus didn't know. I found Patricia Chen through a recommendation from a colleague at work, someone from the San Francisco office I'd never mentioned to Marcus. Patricia specialized in tax law and forensic accounting, and she didn't ask questions when I told her I needed a consultation, but couldn't let my new husband know. I need to understand injured spouse relief, I told her in her sleek downtown office, my wedding ring feeling heavy on my finger. Hypothetically, if my spouse had significant tax debt, say from a business partner or ex-girlfriend, could filing jointly make me liable for that? Patricia's eyes sharpened. Yes, joint filing means joint and several liability. If the IRS can't collect from one spouse, they'll take it from the other. Is your husband in debt? I don't know yet, but I want to be prepared. She studied me for a long moment. Most newlyweds don't come in asking about asset protection strategies. I'm thorough. Thorough is good. She pulled out a folder. Let me explain Form 8379, the injured spouse allocation. If you file jointly and the IRS seizes your refund to pay your spouse's debt, we're talking things like back taxes, child support, federal student loans, you can file this form to get your portion back. But you have to prove the money was yours. Your income, your withholdings, your deductions. How would I prove that? Keep everything separate. Your paychecks go into your account. Your withholdings are documented. If you do get a refund, you can show the IRS exactly how much came from your income versus his. They'll return your portion. And if I file this form, he won't know until after? Her expression grew very serious. Mrs. Chen, if you're in a situation where you need to hide financial protection strategies from your husband, you might need a different kind of lawyer. I might, I agreed. But first, I need to protect myself. Then I'll deal with the rest. She nodded slowly. Keep records of everything, bank statements, pay stubs, tax documents. Make copies and keep them somewhere he can't access. If you're filing jointly and there's debt you don't know about, the injured spouse form will be your lifeline. But it only works if you can prove the money was yours. I left her office with a plan forming. In my first life, I'd combined our finances immediately. Joint checking account, joint savings, everything tangled together until I couldn't prove what was mine and what was his. This time, I kept my accounts separate. It's just easier for now, I told Marcus when he asked. Work deposits directly into my Bank of America account, and it's such a hassle to change it. We can combine everything later. Later when? His tone was light, but I caught the edge. After we're settled into the house. No rush, right? We're married now? What's mine is yours. I kissed his cheek, playing the naive wife perfectly. He relaxed, because he thought the house would be his leverage. Once we bought it, once I was invested in the mortgage and the life we were building, I'd fold. I'd folded before. Not this time. I started documenting everything. Every conversation, every financial decision. I bought a small safe and hid it in my closet at work. storing copies of every bank statement, every pay stub, every scrap of financial paper. At home, I played the perfect wife. I cooked dinner, I laughed at Marcus's jokes, I even had coffee with Veronica when she invited me. "I'm so glad Marcus found you," she said, her smile sharp and pretty over her latte. "Deserves someone stable. His last girlfriend was such a mess." "Oh?" I tilted my head, curious and harmless. Total disaster with money. Had this consulting business that went under, tax problems, debt, the whole thing. She waved her hand dismissively. "Marcus tried to help her, but you can't save someone who won't save themselves." I wanted to throw my coffee in her face. Instead, I nodded sympathetically. "That sounds stressful for him." "It was, but that's all in the past now." She leaned forward conspiratorially. "Between you and me, I think he married you partly to prove he was over all that drama. You're so together, so responsible." "I try to be." "It's refreshing. His ex was always asking him for money, always in crisis. You have your own career, your own life. He needs that." I smiled and agreed and let her think I was as stupid as Marcus did. But inside, I was cataloging every word, every admission, because Veronica had just confirmed what I'd suspected. She was the ex-girlfriend with the failed business and the tax debt. And Marcus was still in contact with her, still helping her, still stealing from me to do it. The tax debt hit in January 2020, right on schedule. Marcus came home from work looking stressed, running his hand through his hair the way he did when he was about to ask me for something. "Baby, we need to talk about taxes." I was stirring pasta sauce, playing domestic. "What about them?" "I think we should file jointly this year. I've been looking at the numbers, and we'll save a lot more money that way." Here it was, the moment he'd hooked me the first time. "Really? My accountant said we'd save more filing separately since we both have good incomes." "Your accountant doesn't know the whole picture." He came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "Trust me on this. I've been doing taxes for years. Joint filing is the way to go." I leaned back into him, soft and compliant. "If you think that's best." "I do. I'll handle everything. You just need to sign." "Okay." I turned in his arms and kissed him. "I trust you." The relief on his face was almost laughable. He thought he'd won, but I'd learned something crucial in my first life. Marcus was a good liar, but he was a lazy one. He'd used the same tactics, the same timeline, because they'd worked before. He'd filed jointly in 2020 to establish the pattern. Then, in 2021, when my big signing bonus hit and the IRS came for Veronica's debt, he'd already have me trained to sign whatever he put in front of me. I had 2 years to prepare. I filed jointly in 2020, just like he wanted. Our refund was small, about $3,000, and we split it to pay down credit card debt. Marcus's credit card debt specifically, but I didn't argue. I was documenting every payment, every transaction, every dollar of my money that went into his pockets. Patricia Chen was helping me build a file. "If this goes where I think it's going," she said during one of our secret meetings, "you'll need irrefutable proof that you were deceived. Keep documenting, keep records." "I am." "Good. And if you can, try to find proof of the debt itself. If your husband is hiding business obligations or tax liability, we need to know before the IRS does." That was harder. Marcus was careful with his paperwork. He kept his laptop password protected and his phone locked. But Veronica was careless. I befriended her on social media. I commented on her posts about her consulting business, the one that was clearly still operating, still making money, still not paying taxes based on the vague posts about tax season stress and dealing with IRS bullshit. I invited her to lunch. "I'm thinking about starting a side business," I told her over salads. "You're so successful with your consulting work. Any advice?" She preened. "It's all about finding your niche. I work with tech startups on their branding strategies. High rates, flexible schedule. It's perfect. Do you work with an accountant? I'd want to make sure I'm doing everything legally." Her expression soured. "Accountants are expensive. Honestly, I just handle most of it myself. File quarterly estimates, keep my receipts. It's not that complicated." "What about taxes? I've heard self-employment tax can be brutal." "It is." She speared a tomato with unnecessary force. I got behind a few years ago, and the IRS won't let it go. They're such vultures. That sounds awful. Can't you set up a payment plan? I tried, but with penalties and interest. She shook her head. It's fine. I have people helping me. People. Meaning Marcus. Well, if you ever need advice or anything, let me know, I said warmly. We're practically family, right? Marcus talks about you all the time. Her smile was smug. He's a good friend. Friend? Sure. I hired a private investigator in March 2020. His name was David Kim, and he came recommended by Patricia. If you need to know where money is going, David can follow it, she'd said. David was thorough. Within 6 weeks, he had proof. Marcus had been funneling money to Veronica's business for years. Wire transfers, cash deposits, payments disguised as consulting fees that went straight into her business account. He's listed as a silent partner in her LLC, David explained, showing me the business registration documents he'd pulled. 20% stake, which means if her business has tax liability, he's on the hook for his share. How much are we talking? He showed me the numbers. Veronica owed $89,000 in back taxes. Penalties and interest brought it to nearly $120,000. Marcus's share, $24,000. But he didn't have $24,000. His credit cards were maxed. His savings were empty. Everything he had was tied up in the house he'd bought in his name alone, using my income to qualify for the mortgage, but structuring the ownership to protect his asset. He needed my money. Specifically, he needed the $47,000 signing bonus I was about to receive. In my first life, I'd gotten that bonus in March 2021 when I made senior associate at my firm. I'd been so excited, so proud. Marcus had suggested we file our 2020 taxes early to get the refund faster. And I'd agreed. We'd filed jointly. The IRS had calculated our refund, my refund, at $47,000 because of my withholdings and the sign-on bonus structure. Then they'd seized it to pay Marcus's portion of Veronica's debt. By the time I found out, the money was gone. And because I'd filed jointly, I had no recourse. Or so I'd thought. But Patricia had taught me about Form 8379, about injured spouse relief, about how to prove the money was mine and get it back. This time, I'd be ready. The promotion came through in March 2021, right on schedule. Senior associate, Marcus cheered, pulling me into a hug when I told him. God, baby, you're incredible. We should celebrate? Dinner at the grill? Champagne? Absolutely. I kissed him, playing the role. And we should think about what to do with the signing bonus. Maybe finally combine our accounts. I know you've wanted to. His eyes lit up. Really? Really. We're partners, right? What's mine is yours. I'd never meant anything less. We filed our taxes in early April. Marcus insisted on doing them himself, like always, and I signed where he told me to sign. Joint filing, just like he wanted. Our projected refund, $47,000. I watched Marcus's face as he submitted the return. Watched the calculation behind his eyes. He thought he'd won. Thought the money would come, the IRS would seize it, and I'd be none the wiser until it was too late. He'd done this before, after all. He knew the timeline. The IRS would process the return, identify the debt, seize the refund, and send a letter explaining the offset. By the time I understood what happened, there'd be nothing I could do. Except this time, I'd filed Form 8379 the same day. Injured spouse relief, requesting allocation of the refund based on my income, my withholdings, my contributions. Patricia had helped me fill it out perfectly. Every number documented, every dollar traced. The form proved that $47,000 of that refund came from my income alone, my withholdings, my signing bonus, Marcus's contribution to our joint refund, $0. The IRS would seize his portion to pay his debt, but my portion, all $47,000 of it, would come back to me, and he wouldn't know until the check arrived. The letter came in June. I got home from work to find Marcus sitting at the kitchen table, his face ashen, holding an envelope with the IRS logo. What's wrong? I asked, setting down my bag. He looked up at me, and for the first time since I'd known him, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. They took the refund. What? What do you mean? The IRS. They took our entire refund to pay off. He stopped, seeming to realize he was about to admit something. To pay off what? I kept my voice confused, concerned. Tax debt. From a business investment I made years ago. I didn't think... He ran his hand through his hair. I didn't think they'd come after it now. I thought we were fine. How much debt? I sat down across from him, playing the shocked wife. Does it matter? The money's gone? All of it. All $47,000? I let my voice rise. Marcus, that was my signing bonus. That was supposed to be for us. For the house renovations. For starting a family. I know. I'm sorry. I'll fix this. I promise. How? How do you fix the IRS taking $50,000? He reached for my hand. I let him take it, though my skin crawled. We'll be fine. We'll work it out. We're a team, remember? A team? I repeated numbly. He bought it. Thought I was in shock. Thought I'd come around eventually. Forgive him. Move on. We'd done it before, after all, in a life he didn't remember, but I'd never forget. I excused myself to the bedroom, locked the door, and waited. The second letter arrived 3 days later. I got to the mail first, thank God. The envelope was addressed to me from the IRS. Inside was a check for $47,000 and a letter explaining that my Form 8379 had been processed. As the injured spouse, I was entitled to my portion of the refund. The debt belonged to my spouse, not to me. I stood in the kitchen, holding the check, feeling the weight of vindication. Then I heard Marcus's key in the lock. I had about 30 seconds to decide how to play this. I could hide the check, keep pretending I didn't know. I could cash it quietly and file for divorce. Or I could make him watch. When Marcus walked in, I was sitting at the kitchen table with the check in front of me. He froze when he saw it. What is that? The IRS sent me a check? I kept my voice even. Apparently, when you file jointly but one spouse has significant debt, the other spouse can file for injured spouse relief. Did you know that? His face went white. I filed Form 8379 the same day we submitted our taxes. I documented every dollar of income, every withholding, every contribution to our joint refund. And guess what? Turns out all $47,000 came from my income. Your contribution was zero. You filed... I protected myself, like my tax attorney advised me to do. I stood, picking up the check. I know about Veronica's tax debt. I know about your 20% stake in her LLC. I know you've been funneling money to her for years. I know you married me because you needed someone with clean finances to hide behind. He tried to speak, but nothing came out. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. I'm going to deposit this check into my separate account, the one you've been pressuring me to close for 2 years. Then I'm going to file for divorce. My lawyer already has all the documentation. Every wire transfer, every loan, every lie. You'll get nothing because the house is in your name, which means it's your asset and your debt. I've never contributed to the mortgage. I have records proving that. You used my income to qualify, but all the payments came from your account. That's not... You can't... I can. And I am. You tried to steal from me, Marcus. You tried to make me responsible for your girlfriend's debt, but I'm not as stupid as you thought. I walked toward the door, check in hand. How did you know? He asked, his voice breaking. How did you know to file that form? I could have told him the truth, could have explained that I'd lived this before, died from the stress of his betrayal, and come back with knowledge he'd never see coming. But that felt like giving him too much. Instead, I smiled. I'm thorough. The divorce was finalized in 8 months. Marcus tried to fight it, tried to claim I owed him for the years of marriage, for supporting me through my career, for the life we'd built together. But my lawyer, the one Patricia Chen recommended, was ruthless. She showed the judge the timeline. Marcus's business investment in Veronica's LLC, the tax debt, the pressure to file jointly, the attempt to seize my refund. She showed the wire transfers, the secret payments, the evidence of financial manipulation. Your Honor, she said, Mr. Chen systematically isolated my client's finances in preparation for this exact scenario. He pushed her to file jointly while keeping all assets in his name. He used her income to qualify for a mortgage she doesn't legally own. And when the IRS came calling for his debt, he tried to steal her money to pay for it. This isn't a marriage, it's a con. The judge agreed. I walked away with my signing bonus, my savings, and my freedom. Marcus kept the house, and the mortgage, and the debt, and Veronica. Last I heard, the IRS was garnishing his wages. Veronica's business folded when the liens hit. They're still together, apparently, sharing a one-bedroom apartment and blaming everyone but themselves. I don't think about them often anymore. I rebuilt my life from scratch. New apartment, new city, new possibilities. The $47,000 went into investments. Patricia helped me find a financial advisor who taught me about tax strategies and asset protection. I learned about trusts and corporations, about keeping money in my name and my control. I dated casually but carefully. When men asked about my ex-husband, I told them the truth. He tried to steal from me, and I caught him. Injured spouse relief, I'd explain. It's an IRS form that protects you when your spouse has tax debt. More people should know about it. I became an accidental expert. Friends going through divorces called me for advice. Colleagues asked about filing strategies. I started giving informal seminars at work about financial protection in marriage. It's not romantic, I'd say, but romance doesn't protect you when someone decides to steal your tax refund. People laughed, but they listened and they learned. 2 years after my divorce, I met someone new. James was an attorney specializing in tax law. Patricia's colleague, actually. We met at a conference where I was giving a talk about financial literacy. "That was impressive," he said afterward. "Most people don't understand injured spouse relief exists, let alone how to use it strategically." I had a good teacher. Patricia mentioned you were her most dedicated client. He smiled. Want to get coffee and talk about tax code? I know that's a terrible pickup line, but I really do find your approach fascinating. I laughed and said yes. We took it slow, kept our finances separate, filed separately even after we moved in together. "I'm not Marcus," James said when I explained my rules. "I don't need access to your accounts to prove we're committed." "I know you're not Marcus, but I also know what can happen when you assume trust means financial entanglement." "Fair enough. My accounts stay mine, your accounts stay yours, and if we ever combine anything, we do it with a contract and an attorney present." "You say the most romantic things." He kissed me. "I try." We got married 3 years later, prenup signed, notarized, and bulletproof. Separate accounts, separate credit, separate everything except the life we were building. On our wedding night, James raised his glass. "To my wife, who taught me that love and financial independence aren't mutually exclusive." I clinked my glass against his. "To my husband, who never asked me to file jointly." "Never will," he promised. And he kept that promise. 5 years after my rebirth, I got a call from an unknown number. "Is this Mrs. Chen, former Mrs. Marcus Chen?" "This is she." I didn't correct the name. I'd kept it for professional reasons, though James and I used his surname socially. "This is Agent Williams from the IRS. I'm calling about your former husband's tax case. We've been trying to collect on the debt allocated during your divorce, but we've hit some complications. I was hoping you might be able to clarify some financial records. I'm happy to help. What do you need?" "Well, Mr. Chen is claiming that certain business investments were made jointly during your marriage, which would make you liable for—" "No." "Excuse me?" "Whatever he's claiming, the answer is no. I have complete financial records from our marriage. Every account was separate. Every investment was his alone. I can provide documentation if you need it." There was a pause. "You kept records?" "Extensive ones. Bank statements, tax returns, wire transfer receipts, business registration documents. All of it." "Mrs. Chen, that would be extremely helpful. We've been trying to pierce through some shell companies and unclear ownership structures. If you have proof that these were his sole investments—" "I do. I'll have my attorney send everything over." I called Patricia as soon as I hung up. "The IRS is investigating Marcus's business dealings." "Good," she said. "He's been hiding assets in Veronica's name. They finally caught on." "How much trouble is he in?" "If they can prove fraud, criminal charges. If not, enough civil penalties to keep him paying for the next decade." I thought about the man who'd married me to steal my tax refund, who'd used me as a shield while he and his girlfriend built a house of cards. "Good," I echoed. The investigation took 18 months. When it concluded, Marcus was charged with tax fraud, conspiracy to defraud the IRS, and falsifying business records. Veronica turned on him almost immediately, taking a plea deal in exchange for testimony. "Your Honor, he told me it would be fine," she sobbed in court. "He said he'd handle everything. I didn't know he was using his wife's money illegally. The prosecutor entered my tax returns as evidence, showed the court how Marcus had filed jointly, anticipated my refund, and prepared to steal it before I'd filed the injured spouse form. This was premeditated," the prosecutor argued. "Mr. Chen married the victim specifically to gain access to her finances. He used her income to qualify for assets in his name only. He pressured her to file jointly knowing it would expose her to his debt. And when she protected herself using legal means, he attempted to claim her assets in the divorce." The defense tried to paint me as vengeful, as a woman scorned, out for revenge. But the numbers didn't lie. Marcus was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. Veronica got probation and a permanent lien on any future business income. I didn't attend the sentencing. I had better things to do. I got promoted to partner at my firm the same week Marcus went to prison. "Congratulations," Patricia said when I told her. "You've come a long way from that scared bride in my office. I had a good teacher. You had good instincts. I just gave you the tools." We had lunch to celebrate. Over wine and pasta, she asked the question I'd been waiting for. "Do you ever regret it? The marriage, I mean? If you'd known from the start." "I did know," I said. "I knew exactly what he was." She raised an eyebrow. "How?" I could have told her, could have explained the impossible truth of dying and waking up 4 years younger with knowledge of everything to come. Instead, I smiled. "Intuition, and a really good tax attorney." She laughed and let it drop, but I thought about it sometimes, about what it meant to live a life twice, to have a second chance most people would kill for. I'd used it for revenge at first, to protect myself, to strike back at the man who'd tried to destroy me. But in the end, I'd used it for something better. Freedom. Freedom from a man who saw me as a mark. Freedom from financial manipulation. Freedom to build a life on my own terms, with my eyes open and my assets protected. And maybe that was better than revenge. Maybe that was justice. 10 years after my rebirth, James. And I bought a house. We structured it carefully. Joint ownership, equal contribution, a legal agreement about what happens if we ever split. Our lawyers drafted everything. Our accountant reviewed the tax implications. "Most couples don't do this much paperwork for a house," our real estate agent said, bemused. "Most couples haven't been through what we've been through," James replied. I squeezed his hand. "We're thorough?" "Thorough is good," the agent said, echoing Patricia's words from a decade ago. We closed on a sunny Thursday in April. Tax season, ironically. As we signed the final papers, both of us, equal partners, equal owners, I thought about the girl I'd been at 26. So eager to trust. So desperate to be loved. So willing to sign anything Marcus put in front of her. She would have been proud of who I'd become. That night, James made dinner while I unpacked boxes. The crystal wine glasses I'd gotten at my first wedding, Marcus's wedding, sat wrapped in newspaper at the bottom of a box. I'd kept them out of spite, but looking at them now, I felt nothing. "Should we use these?" James asked, finding them. "Actually, no, let's donate them." "You sure? They're nice." "They're from my wedding to Marcus. I don't need the reminder." He took the box without argument and set it aside for goodwill. We drank champagne from regular glasses that night, toasting to new beginnings and ugly paperwork and the kind of love that doesn't require blind trust. "To filing separately," James said. "To injured spouse relief," I added. "To never needing it," he finished. We drank, we laughed, we built a life, and I never looked back. 15 years after my rebirth, I wrote a book. It started as a blog post about my experience with injured spouse relief. Just a simple explanation of the form and how it had saved me from financial ruin. The post went viral. Thousands of people commented, sharing their own stories of financial manipulation, of spouses who stole tax refunds, of partners who hid debt, of marriages that were really just cons. "I didn't know this form existed," one woman wrote. "My ex bankrupted me. If I'd known..." I started responding, offering advice, connecting people with tax attorneys like Patricia. A literary agent reached out. Have you ever thought about writing a book? I hadn't, but once she asked, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Injured Spouse: How I Survived, Financial Abuse and Fought Back came out 2 years later. It was part memoir, part tax guide, part call to action. I explained injured spouse relief in detail, walked readers through the form, gave them resources for finding tax attorneys and protecting themselves. I didn't mention the rebirth, didn't talk about dying and coming back. Instead, I framed it as intuition. Something told me to protect myself, even though I loved him. Trust that voice. The book became a bestseller. I did interviews, went on talk shows, spoke at conferences about financial literacy and abuse prevention. And everywhere I went, people thanked me. You saved my life, a woman told me at a book signing. I was about to file jointly with my boyfriend. He'd been pressuring me for months. Then I read your book and realized he was using me to hide his debt. I left him instead. Good, I said. You deserve better. So do you. I'm sorry about what your ex-husband did. I smiled. I'm not. He made me who I am. And it was true. Marcus's betrayal, in both lives, had taught me something valuable. Love without knowledge is dangerous. Trust without verification is foolish. But knowledge with preparation is power. 20 years after my rebirth, I became a grandmother. James's daughter from his first marriage had a baby girl. She asked me to be the godmother. I want her to grow up strong, she said, holding the tiny bundle. Like you, someone who doesn't take shit from anyone. Language, James said mildly. She's not wrong, I said, looking down at my goddaughter's perfect face. What's her name? Patricia, after your lawyer, the one who saved you. I looked up, surprised. Really? Really, you talk about her all the time, how she taught you to protect yourself, how she gave you the tools to fight back. I want my daughter to have that kind of strength. I held baby Patricia and thought about the woman she'd been named for, about the tools and knowledge and preparation that had saved my life. She'll be strong, I promised. I'll make sure of it. And I did. I taught her about money from the time she could count, about keeping records, about trusting people but verifying everything, about the importance of financial independence, even in love. When she got engaged at 25, she called me first. Auntie, I need advice. Tyler wants to file jointly after we're married, says it's more efficient, but something in your book. What does your gut say? My gut says to keep my accounts separate, but I don't want him to think I don't trust him. Do you trust him? She paused. I do, but I also trust myself, and myself says to be careful. Then be careful. Trust isn't about blind faith. It's about informed decisions. If he's worthy of your trust, he'll understand your need for protection. And if he doesn't, then he's not worthy. Tyler understood. They filed separately, kept separate accounts, built a strong, healthy marriage based on mutual respect and individual autonomy. At their wedding, Patricia came up to me. Thank you for teaching me this, for showing me that love doesn't mean giving up control. Your namesake taught me that, I said. I'm just passing it on. 25 years after my rebirth, I got a call from a corrections facility. This is a collect call from Marcus Chen. Will you accept the charges? I almost hung up, almost let it go to voicemail, but curiosity won. This is she. It's Marcus. His voice sounded older, tired. I wasn't sure you'd answer. I wasn't sure I would either. What do you want? I'm getting out next month. Served my time. I wanted to, I don't know, apologize, maybe? Maybe? I was wrong about everything. About using you. About thinking I could get away with it. You were smarter than I gave you credit for. I laughed, and it wasn't kind. I'm going to give you some free advice, Marcus. Don't call this an apology when you're really just admitting I beat you. You were never sorry for what you did. You were sorry you got caught. There's a difference. Silence on the line. Anything else? I asked. How did you know? His voice broke. How did you know to file that form? To protect yourself before I even made a move? It was like you knew what I was going to do before I did it. I could have told him, could have given him the satisfaction of understanding. Instead, I said, "I'm thorough. Goodbye, Marcus." I hung up, and I never thought about him again. 30 years after my rebirth, I retired. James and I bought a small house in Vermont. Quiet, peaceful, far from the chaos of my old life. I still got emails from readers, still did occasional speaking engagements, but mostly I gardened, cooked, read books, enjoyed the life I'd fought so hard to build. One afternoon, sitting on the porch with coffee and a book, James asked me a question. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd stayed with Marcus? If you just accepted what he did and moved on?" I thought about it. About the first life I'd lived, dying at 30 with nothing to my name. About the years of betrayal and lies I'd endured because I didn't know how to fight back. "I know what would have happened," I said. "I'd have lost everything, and I'd have blamed myself for trusting him." "But you didn't." "No, I didn't. How did you know to fight back?" It was the same question Marcus had asked, the same question I dodged for 30 years. But James deserved the truth. "I lived it before," I said quietly. "I married him, trusted him, lost everything, and I died broke and broken at 30 years old." James set down his coffee. "What?" "I died, and then I woke up 4 years earlier with a chance to do it all differently. So I did." He stared at me. "You're serious?" "Completely." That's impossible." "I know, but it happened, and I used that second chance to protect myself, to fight back, to make sure he never took anything from me again." James was quiet for a long time. Then, "If you could do it all again, would you still marry him, knowing what you know?" "I had to marry him," I said, "to understand who he really was, to learn what I was capable of, to become who I needed to be." "And who's that?" I smiled. "Someone who files injured spouse relief before the IRS even knows there's debt to collect." He laughed, kissed me, didn't question whether my story was true or metaphor. It didn't matter what mattered was that I'd survived. I'd fought, I'd won, and I'd built a life worth living twice. I died a second time at 78 years old, peacefully this time, in my sleep, with James beside me and my goddaughter Patricia holding my hand. No aneurysm, no stress, no betrayal weighing on my heart. Just a life well lived, fully experienced, completely mine. As the darkness closed in, I thought about that 26-year-old girl who died the first time, who'd trusted the wrong man and paid the ultimate price. I hoped, wherever she was, she knew that she'd gotten her revenge, not just against Marcus, against the world that had taught her to be compliant, to trust without question, to sign whatever was put in front of her. I'd learned better, and I'd spent 30 extra years teaching others to do the same. "Thank you," I whispered, though I wasn't sure who I was thanking. The universe? Fate? My own stubborn refusal to stay dead? It didn't matter. What mattered was the forms I'd filed, the accounts I'd protected, the knowledge I'd shared. What mattered was that when Marcus Chen had tried to steal from me twice across 2 lifetimes, I'd been ready. I'd filed injured spouse relief, and I'd gotten everything back.